I feel like the repercussions for certain people have been a lot worse. Like we've seen some lawsuits, there's been things in the news. I'll probably come up with 2 designs or 3 designs a month that I know are going to sell. My total sales in revenue are close to 1.9 million.
Today's guest for Print on Demand Wisdom is Jay from Jay's Way Works. He's got a very interesting approach for print on demand. To give you a quick heads up, he's only got about 1,000 designs live on Amazon Merch, even though he's been selling on Amazon for about 7 or 8 years, and he's still made hundreds of thousands in royalties with that small number, or relatively small number, of listings. He's been in the print on demand field since the early days, back in 2012. He's been selling on Etsy for ages, and he shares a lot of knowledge and tips in this video, including some of his best-selling niches, what his pricing strategy is, how his approach differs from other people, and how he approaches advertising as well. Hello, Jay. How are you doing?
I'm well, Philip. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks. Thanks a lot for coming on. Looking forward to talk to you today with a focus on Amazon Merch and Etsy. But before we get into the details, how did you get started with all of this?
I'll try to make it a long story short, but it's kind of one that goes back 12 years. So as long as I can shorten it enough. Basically, I was a graphic designer by trade. I went to college for it to learn. At the time that I was going to college, there was a shortage of graphic designers in the GTA, Greater Toronto area, from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. By the time I was done my first year of college under my belt of a 3-year program, there was a surplus of 50,000 graphic designers. So it quickly went from, trying to satiate something that I could maybe do that I had a knack for, to somewhere where like, I don't know if I'd be able to get a job even. But to backpedal a little bit, in high school, I was the kid airbrushing t-shirts. I was hustling some shirts out of a backpack, riding around on my bike before getting a driver's license and stuff. So I always kind of wanted to do something like that. But fast forward 1 year out of college, or 1 year into a 3-year program, I got basically headhunted. In a way, I got offered a job ultimately, just based on 2 friends that had previously put in a word for me at a company that they had worked at for a year and change at the time. And I figured, well, I can either, finish another year and a half of college and then hope that there's a chance in hell that I'll get a job, or I can just jump ship, go full time, get real life experience in my field. And sure enough, I gained more in, the first 6 months on the job than most people did after another 2 or 3 years of schooling would have done. So I ended up working my way up the ranks, left that job a little bit later, ended up managing at Canada's #1 publisher. I actually had 144 graphic designers that were reporting to me. And then layoffs came. Once you removed yourself from a unionized position and put myself into management, thinking all would be great, but that 40-hour work week unionized turned into 60 hours a week, and I'm working on Sundays trying to set up meetings for the week. And it's a whole bunch of I guess meetings that could have been emails, right? The funny, that commercial cliche. But layoffs came, and sure enough, without being protected by the union anymore, I was put on the chopping block there. I got offered a job by a friend to, basically putting in a word for me to work at a data center at TD Bank. And that was probably the most soul crushing experience of my life. As a designer, as a visual person, we were looking at mainframe, so black screen and green and white text.
That sounds horrible.
It's a 70s sort of setup, right? But it's been bulletproof, and the banks have been using it for literally generations. That was 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. 2 days a week, 1 day off, and then it would be 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So it would flip flop back and forth, but not even in a healthy way. Like and then in Canada, I assume it's not unlike the UK that way. 4:30 p.m. is dark usually, and in the winter it's dark. In summer it's dark in the morning still. So it's like at some point in winter it's always dark though. So I didn't know at times, 4:30, 5 o'clock when you're setting the alarm. I had no idea if it was day or night. And that's a terrible way to live your life, right? You end up just napping for 2 or 3 hours here and there. And sometimes it feels like you've gotten a full night's sleep. Other times it feels like you haven't slept at all. And then the same idea. Sometimes we weren't allowed to leave our seat. You hear the
Oh
story
my
a
God.
lot, and they just kept buying us pizza lunches as a reward. But meanwhile, their pockets are getting padded, but we're still there consolidating hundreds of millions of dollars of debt at the end of the month. Conference calls that literally last days. And it got to a point where I was so stressed, I was becoming basically, not so nice of a person. And then trying to sleep, like, self-medicating, having a few extra drinks, one or two turned into three or four pretty quickly, just to make sure that I could get to sleep so that I could wake up at 4 a.m. Because if I left 15 minutes late by 6:15, it would take me an hour and a half. You're late for work. Yeah, and like 15-hour days every day. And it sucked terribly, to a point where I thought, how could I potentially even hurt myself just enough to not go to work? Like, I literally thought of maybe
Oh
shutting
wow.
my finger in a car door, right? Not, I mean, I have a zest for life. I want nothing to that degree, but just enough to literally hurt myself. And I'm like, what am I doing? This is crazy. I get to work that day, the same day. I kid you not. Office communicator was, it's like an intranet. It was like MSN, but internal. I get a ping from one of my counterparts at a satellite office, and he said the same thing. He just said, Jay, have you ever thought about hurting yourself just enough to not have to come into work today? I said, okay, this is crazy. Like, are you serious right now? Like, what are the odds, right? And then
No
apparently the
way.
odds were actually really good. So this is not an unusual story, I guess, for people in the corporate environment. And I didn't know that because the stigma is to not talk about these things, right? So I started, I ended up needing to speak to somebody clearly, because if you ever think of hurting yourself in any way or doing some kind of damage to your personal being, even mentally, so that you don't have to deal with, the confines of that 9 to 5, or in my case, is 7 to 7, then, speak to somebody. Absolutely. Um, so I did that, and it was basically, became very clear for a limited time. Like, she told me, you already know the answers to your questions. Like, you need to leave that job, and get back into something you enjoy doing, which was the graphic design. So I started freelancing, and then putting Craigslist ads, Kijiji ads. They're all online classifieds. And then one of the people that first responded to those was a guy who was selling on Etsy, and he was printing with his own vinyl plotter. He had a Roland, a nice, really nice machine, and he needed somebody to keep up with demand, so design for him. So I was designing these very basic vector graphics that he was able to plot and weed with quite easily with his plotter, and he was heat pressing them on shirts. And this guy was making a killing. So he basically offered me $10, I think, or $12 a design Canadian. I upped that to 15, and everything was good. And then I realized that I'm selling this design to him once, and he's selling it over and over and over, right? So we
Yeah.
changed that kind of parameters to $3 royalty on a T-shirt and $5 royalty per hoodie or sweatshirt. He was
Hmm.
cool with it, but it also made me vested, because now I'm making banger designs that are gonna, sell on repeat, right? So, if it sold 5 times, that I made more than my $15 that I would have having sold it once. Um, yeah, so that, didn't take long. From then on, I opened my own Etsy shop, and he ended up fulfilling for my stuff. So that was really organically my way of falling into print on demand that way, at a duress, at a necessity, and then, out of the zest for selling t-shirts again, really.
So what time was this? What time was this going on that you transitioned from your job to this Etsy kind of
Uh,
freelance job?
that was probably 2010 to 2012. And then
Wow.
by 2013 is when I opened my first Etsy shop.
You've got a very vivid memory of that time. You were describing like the situation at work very well. So it must mean that it was a difficult time. And I can definitely relate. Like when I was still employed, I was also stressed. Not to the extent of you, I think. I wasn't thinking of harming myself, but I was stressed out. If I look back at pictures from that time now, I had gained a lot more weight, which I didn't even notice at the time, but I was a lot chubbier than I am now.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and yeah, I was very happy to transition away from that. But I'm interested, how did that work? So obviously you were kind of stuck in that job, I'm guessing, because you were worried of taking the plunge to just starting freelance or self-employed. So how did you move from one to the other?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I have to say that when you say things like, well, maybe it wasn't to the extent that mine was under that duress or that stress, it's not to say that your stress wasn't the worst you've ever experienced, right? It's not a competition. And just because you haven't
No.
necessarily had it, or anybody out there listening, if just because you haven't, don't underestimate, what stress, mental duress can do to you physically. As you said, I was way heavier than I am. And yeah, just because it's not, doesn't seem to be as worse as somebody else or as bad as somebody else, it doesn't mean it's not your worst, right? Or that you should ignore it. But
Yeah,
so
and definitely don't wait until you get feeling like thoughts of hurting yourself. Like you have to
absolutely.
wait until it gets that extreme. Yeah.
But yeah, that said, because there were 7-hour shifts or 12-hour shifts, um, I was, you have like you work 14 days a month, give or take 14 to 15, right? Because they're 12-hour shifts. So you're literally working like 3 days on, one off, two on, three off, all flip flopping. But you do have enough downtime that you really should be catching up on sleep. But, the stress and anxiety kept me up through that anyway. So I started freelancing on the side, doing logos, business cards, whatever I could, all the I guess, online classified ads. And turns out there's a limit to how many you can actually put up, depending on the websites. So on Craigslist or Kijiji, for example, which is I think a Canadian one, there was 200. Clearly I had over 200 classified ads just for logos and business cards. Those were things my forte that kind of transitioned well into t-shirt design, right? But so I built that up. So I literally had no time off because I ended up getting busy enough that it just got to a point where I had to just quit the bank job. I couldn't continue to maintain both, right? Like at that point, not only is the stress element there, but you're literally burning the candle at both ends. So
How long do you remember how long it took you to kind of start building up that freelance work to the point where you could say, okay, now I need to quit this and I've got enough to kind of carry on with on the freelance side?
it took me about a year. Yeah, I probably could have done it quicker if I had the confidence that I do now. But hindsight's 2020, right? So yeah, the other thing is like, don't ever sell yourself short. You're worth a lot more in a healthy state doing something you enjoy than, working at a crazy stressful job making somebody else rich. So don't underestimate your value in any way. And yeah, go like I wish I had hammered down harder and I wish I had charged more from the beginning.
What I always say as well is I would always much rather do something that I enjoy and earn less than do something that I hate and earn a lot more. Like you might be in a really good job that pays you well, maybe you've progressed to a manager position, but if you just hate the work and you're going to do that for the rest of your life, like I think it'd be a lot better for you in general, for your sanity, for your health, to take the plunge. Obviously, there's a risk attached to it. I get it. If people have got families, mortgages, etc., I totally understand that. But if there is a chance for you to change away from that thing that you hate and do something else for less money, if you can survive on it, it's worth it in my opinion. Just because it is healthier overall.
Could not agree more. It's funny because
Yeah.
I actually watched a video from Ali Abdaal this morning, and it was how to guarantee that you'll have regrets in life, or how to guarantee that you'll hate your life or have regretted your life. And one of them was, chasing the dollar, prioritizing that. So prioritizing the scholastic education and then maximizing every ounce of that degree or that, that piece of paper to make the most money out of it, and prioritize that over your friendships, over your friends, over your, the fun you get out of anything that you could be doing. That came back from a study from my psychologist that he cited, who said the top 5 regrets that people had on their deathbed. And one of which was that they hadn't prioritized, work or making all of the money over everything else that matters in life.
That's a really cool book. I read that book. The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, I think it's called.
Nice.
Great read. And working too much or putting too much emphasis on work was a big one of them. So you started your first, your own Etsy store in 2013, did you say?
Yep.
And that was print on demand. So quite a while still before Amazon merch as well, which you sell on as well. So I'm curious, back in 2013, what was the landscape like? Was there a lot of videos to help you out? Was it the same sort of products that were selling back then? Yeah, what was Etsy like?
It was the Wild West in terms of intellectual property. People were just throwing up whatever, and there was no like governance really.
Still kind of happens, but maybe less. Would you
Yeah,
say?
well, you know what? There's a resurgence of it. Maybe I'm just well, I am obviously more educated in that department than I was 10 or 12 years ago, but um, maybe, yeah, it is as rampant, but I feel like the repercussions for certain people have been a lot worse. Like we've seen some lawsuits, there's been things in the news.
Hmm.
Back then, it was like, you could put whatever you wanted on, list it and sell it, and
No one cared.
no one seemed to care enough, or at least Etsy, I don't think was popular enough at the time that it was like under a microscope or spotlight. Um, but yeah, I think it was probably easier, as everybody said, like in time, people with any kind of design ability were able to now make a living doing something that they enjoyed. So people were flocking there in droves. It became it was much more, I think, of a designer landscape or an artisan landscape than it is now. I think anybody can really, design like a pro if you're using some of the tools out there between AI and Kittle and things like that, right? Um, but yeah, it was very different. It was very different. It was, I hate to say the word easier, but I think it was ultimately easier, in that there's a lot less competition.
I do agree. We can say two things can be true. It can be a fact that it was easier back then, and that there's still a lot of potential now. It's it's not like it was easy back then, so now it's impossible. I don't think it's either or. Sure, it's gotten harder. There is more competition, but also very clearly more people are now shopping online than they were in 2013. Right, so that's another thing you have to take into perspective. But yeah, let's talk about the Amazon merch journey a little bit as well. So I'm guessing you probably got into it quite early if you were already in the POD space.
Yeah, I think it was mid to late 2017, and one of my biggest hurdles in Etsy was having something that I had. It was something on a shirt was getting ripped off by the bigger shops out there who were trademarking phrases that I had on my designs and then serving me takedowns for my own ideas and whatnot. So I ended up registering a trademark back in 2014 to basically protect my own brand, my own shop at the time. And then somebody in the merch community approached me a few years later saying that they'd like to license my trademark and that I could leverage their account and, basically license out my designs to them. And then while waiting for, an application to get accepted. And at the time, it was still taking, it wasn't like an overnight thing. It was very much, it could be days or weeks before you got approved, even 2016, 2017. So I ended up, applying there and getting in after a couple of weeks, just checking the account. And it was all of a sudden I had a dashboard. So that was kind of it for me. And then at the time you could only upload one a day, I think, for up to 10 listings, or maybe two a day. Up to 10 was it. In tier 10, there was not like, you couldn't even have X amount of products, right? You had 10 products. So it was like, I just went one t-shirt, one sweatshirt, because we're coming up on Christmas, Q4 there. And yeah, I hammered it with the Christmas stuff that I knew had already sold on Etsy. And I hit probably 3 months later, I hit 25, then tier 100.
Oh, it definitely helped starting in Q4 then, I guess. So you didn't buy yourself out as such. It was organic sales.
I probably would have now, and I hesitate to recommend it because then you'll never truly know what actually works, right? It's just an easy way out. But being from Canada, there was just no option to buy yourself. I would have to have put in a US address that I didn't know anybody. Point. So I had no options. And like to go back to your point about like, the landscape before, there was no YouTube, there was no content creators on either subject back then. So it was like, a lot of it, as you know, too, was rolling with the punches and figuring it out on the fly, right?
Yeah, so you kind of went into it blind, trying out stuff. You mentioned something there that I want to go back to. So you said you registered a trademark. How was that process for you? Because I'm guessing a lot of the audience watching, if they've been selling for a bit longer, might have thought about it before. Well, I've thought about it before myself, to trademark a phrase or like an expression. So what's the process like? Is it like easy? Is it a lot of hassle? What was the experience?
So to be clear, the intention of a trademark is to have a registered brand, and this is not legal advice by any means. So please, solicit a lawyer's actual advice. Get everything from the horse's mouth, as I'd always suggest. But based on my experience, like whatever it is you want to trademark should be for brand recognition, not just a phrase on a shirt or words on a shirt, because those are used as ornamental. Those are what classified as ornamental, meaning that they're literally just part of a design, which wouldn't function properly as a trademark because it's not a brand identifier. That said, the process was relatively smooth. I used a lawyer who I've spoken to you about, actually. I'm actually going to be having him on. I've had him in my inner circle, and it was a great kind of education. It was a 20-minute education with question and answer, and then I'm going to have him live this weekend, actually. But I've passed on his contact info to you as well. But he's excited to meet with you too. But I would honestly recommend a lawyer. You can do it for free or cheap for $100 or $200 US, but it was worth the roughly $1,000 US, all said and done from start to finish. So there's I think the filing fee of $200 or $250. Then there's the lawyer fee of whatever, maybe $400 or $500, and then there's the actual registration fee if it's approved for another $300 or so. That puts you up and around the $1,000 to $1,100 US. And it takes anywhere between 10 and 14 months from my experience. So,
okay. And that's registering in the US in a specific class or?
Yes, that is for one class in the US. And that for us, for t-shirts, it was class 025. So I love the revamping that the US Patent and Trademark Office, the uspto.gov website did. It's so much more user-friendly now. Definitely make that part of your arsenal when you are listing, because the last thing you want to do is get on anybody's bad side, intellectual property-wise.
And you feel like it was worth it registering that trademark? Like, has it helped you protect your brand from copycats?
It's been a double-edged sword. So I've been able to protect my brand by far, definitely more on the worth it side of things. But when we talk about Amazon merch, for example, I've also registered the brand in Amazon's brand registry, and Amazon.com proper does not speak with the folks at merch. So now I get auto rejections from bots for my own trademark, and I have to go back and forth to try to get my stuff actually listed in my own account.
That's so typical.
Yeah, isn't it though? Yeah. So you've been thinking about registering a brand too?
I've thought about it in the past, yeah, but I eventually turned down the idea because I mean, especially if you want to trademark across multiple markets and then all the hassle attached to it. I don't like that kind of bureaucracy part of the business anyway. So, yeah, I left it. But no, thanks for passing on the contact. And I'm going to speak to him and hopefully have him on my podcast, the lawyer who you're working with. So that should be interesting. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about is your tier on Amazon merch. And if you want to share, you don't have to. If you want to share your sales throughout the years, because I think you've got a bit of an interesting approach or ratio there, at least.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to share. I've always kind of been pretty transparent that way. I won't necessarily share, my designs or anything like that, of course. But I am in tier 8,000, and as we were talking just before this, I had a couple of silent rejections, so my live designs are now back down below 1,600. So I have 1,598 designs of 8,000 uploaded, which and I'm in tier 8,000. And if I go to my producer dashboard here, my total sales in revenue are close to 1.9 million. That is obviously not the royalties. My royalties are approaching, actually will hit 388,000 in royalties today. I should hit that. Wow. If I do another $70.
That's amazing. Good job. And also it's super interesting because you're in tier 8,000. So most people would assume you've got 8,000 sales, or maybe a bit less, maybe a bit more. And most people probably also think you've got your slots filled in with designs, especially since you've been selling for quite a long time on Amazon merch. So what's the approach there? How does your approach differ from most people?
I think it starts with, not throwing a bunch of crap at the wall to see what sticks, right? That proverbial pasta at the wall, to see if it's ready or if it's good enough to stick. I do everything with intentionality. Um, Knowing, okay, so if you can sell elsewhere, if you're on the Redbubbles and TeePublics of the world and not on Etsy yet, at least you have an idea of what you're doing right. I would, try to leverage any other platforms that you're not restricted, like with merch, for example, right? Um, and see what's selling there. Do everything intentionally. Like I'll probably come up with 2 designs or 3 designs a month that I know are going to sell. I'm not looking at doing. I'd rather sell that design 100 times over every single month than focus on trying to get 50 designs up a day or whatever it is that people do.
Yeah, yeah, I get your point. So rather than spending a lot of time creating a lot of designs, some of them sell, some of them don't. You're kind of hyper focused. You're only coming up with a few designs a month that are most likely going to get you a lot of sales and turn into regular sellers. So it's kind of more like a sniper rather than a shotgun approach.
Big time. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it comes down to knowing the niche, right? It's not necessarily a niche that you need to know going into it, but do the research. Like understand the colloquialisms, the nuances in the language, the inside jokes, all the things that are going to set you apart, and not just redoing something that is based on somebody's, BSR because an app told you it was sub, 100K. Just because a design has a million BSR doesn't mean it's not a potential winner. It just may have not been executed properly, right? So if once you understand the niche, you can identify amazing ideas that nobody's going after because thankfully it had a million BSR, right? So it doesn't mean it's not going to be a massive winner. And for me, it's always been, getting a slice of that giant pie as opposed to trying to own all these micro niches. It just seems like such a waste of time.
How do you find or pick your niches then?
It's kind of, once you understand what works, I just kind of do more of the same. So the only thing I haven't really dabbled much in, and I'm regretting not having touched, has been the political end of stuff. Because with everything going on now, it's a gold mine. People who haven't made any money are making tens of thousands of dollars a month. This past month, anyway. But otherwise, it's just looking really and building on what's working currently in Etsy. For me, is the easy one because I've always equated Etsy and Amazon the way the fashion industry is or has been for the UK versus North America. So the UK, for example, has always been easily 3 years ahead of us aesthetically, like from a design and style perspective. I feel that Etsy has also been at least a year and a half to 2 years ahead of the Amazon merch shopper or the Walmart shopper, right? It's more boutique-y, it's more artisan, it's a little more refined that way. And I feel like even if things are not yet selling on Amazon, that you might have something selling decently on Etsy, it will in time start to sell on Amazon as well once that market starts to get a little more saturated. So I think you can definitely double dip there. But I would start on the Etsy end because look at what people are currently paying, $25, $30, $35 for on a t-shirt before looking at Amazon to see what people are paying $15 or $16 for on a t-shirt, right? Like where would you rather focus your attention, right? On designs that are selling for $35, $40 or on the hundreds of thousands of people that are copying other people's designs selling at $13 to $15, right? It just makes no sense to saturate those, underserved and undervalued niches.
That's definitely an interesting approach to look on Etsy and to try and identify niches that are going to do well on Amazon in the future. I've never really thought about it that way. But it seems like it's been working for you, also considering that you started on Etsy, you had a lot of experience built up there, and then kind of moved that experience over to Amazon. But I'm guessing that you're mainly targeting sort of big evergreen topics.
Yeah, for the most part. And I need to say that it's not just Etsy, but I'll also look at if something I see that has a nice aesthetic, like some muted, maybe distressed, that looks a little surfy, something, I'll look at the Billabongs of the world. I'll look at the Quicksilvers and see what they're doing, right? Because those are companies that have literally invested hundreds of millions of dollars into marketing to know in advance what the market wants, right? And Pinterest Trends is another great one. They've been like over 80% accuracy in predicting trends, design aesthetic trends coming down the pipeline. So literally look anywhere but merch if you're looking what's going to work with merch.
In terms of evergreen and trends, you do focus on evergreen niches more, or?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think the evergreen for me is going to be, it's the long term. It's definitely long term evergreen. And that's not to say that a political niche isn't necessarily evergreen. It just means that I'm looking for something that may have a longer shelf life. Even evergreen niches will have a shelf life, right? Design, aesthetics change, the color palettes change, the even keywording, the SEO stuff changes. But I try to do things that are going to last over time. So to answer your question, like I guess in a roundabout way, the biggest niches for me, and I've said this before, were tacos, cats, and birthdays. And I'm allergic to cats, don't really like cats. I just happen to be good at designing things with cats in them.
Okay.
And, they're not going out of style. Same with the t-shirts. That's the other thing. People always say t-shirts are too saturated, but you know what? Show me somebody who doesn't own a t-shirt, right?
Yeah, that's true. And the thing with the cat niche as well, I think it's a good example to show that you're going hyper focused with, I'm guessing, very unique designs into a very competitive niche that is difficult to break into, at least organically without ads. So that kind of begs the question in my mind now, because you're competing in such a competitive niche, do you start off organically? Do you push your designs with ads? What's the strategy there?
If we're talking merch, I start $18 in terms of pricing, because people say like, yeah, price low to get more sales volume, but $18 is low. Like if we're comparing literally any other marketplace on the planet outside of Amazon or Walmart, $18 is cheap. So that's where I start. You're at least going to get paid for your design at the time, and then I'll go up from there. And I used to not advertise as of even 3 or 4 months ago, maybe 6 months ago now, I was saying that I didn't advertise those designs for the first week or two to see if they could rank organically. But now by day 3 or 4, if I haven't sold it in a niche that, one of my main ones that I think I've identified a gap or an aesthetic trend or something unique that I could bring to that market, if it hasn't worked organically in 2-3 days, I'll start advertising it. And if you finally understand the niche enough to know what should sell, and that's the ticket, right, is knowing the niche, then you should have no problems running ads to it and seeing sales almost, within the next 5 to 7 days, I think.
Is that automatic ads with talking about the Amazon ads console, right? Are you using automatic targeting, or do you use the manually targeted campaigns, or both, perhaps?
I've only very recently, since watching one of your videos actually, where you introduced the Tomas method, I tried that. I've had limited success. So I've tried it on 3 ads, one or 3 actual ASINs. One, it didn't work. The other one, limited success, and one, it's working well. But normally I'm doing the sponsored display, the automatic targeting. So you've got the 4 unique identifiers, the broad match exact, and whatever those 4 are. That's typically all I do. And I'll do that for a campaign of maybe 10 ASINs in the same niche. I won't do more than that, because sometimes, you'll lose all your budget to 1 or 2 specific listings, and then, some of the other stuff will just get buried. But I try to limit it to that. But I don't do like, I guess, lottery campaigns. I guess that was a new term to me as of 6 months ago. But I don't do them in terms of like 1,000 ASINs on a single campaign. It just makes no logical sense to me.
What about Etsy there? Does anything differ in terms of your ad strategy or your pricing strategy as well? So you said $18.99 on Amazon. What about Etsy?
So Etsy, I'm looking at $10 profit at 30% off sale is kind of where I like to be. So for Etsy, for me on a t-shirt, so I'll sell the Gildan 64,000, the Gildan soft style, for $27 US plus 6 or 7 shipping. So we're looking at $34. If you had a 30% off sale on that, and then you lose your 12 or 13% to Etsy fees and et al, like all the other charges there, you're looking at still a $10 profit at 30% with a 30% sale running. So if you don't have that sale running, oftentimes Etsy will still push your stuff with offsite ads. So you may be paying the 12% offsite ad fee, but it's still lower than the 30% you would have, given with running a sale. So now you're still making like $15, $16, $17 US per t-shirt on a Gildan soft style. So like, it's also about, for me, pricing, appropriately for the niche, because perceived value is such an underrated element where, and I'm not talking about differentiating yourself by $2 more than somebody else's shirt, right? Like, charge significantly more. Most people are selling $14, $15. Look at the high end. So if the median, it's not really about the averages, but if the high end, like you're looking, is $33, then I want to be in that top 20 percentile. So I'll charge the 27, $28. And then if you're differentiating yourself by $10 over somebody else, people just will just inherently think that your product is better quality, it's printed better, it's going to last longer. If you've got only $1 or $2 more, then they're going to dissect it. I would dissect it. Why is it only $1 or $2 more? What's the difference? Maybe I'll err on, the side of the financial caution and buy the cheaper one at that point. With Etsy ads, I mean, once you understand that will sell, like in the beginning, Etsy ads are the only way you can really gain a ton of data in a short time. So I would recommend that you try it, but use a budget that you can afford, and let it run for 30 days, right? Gather as much data as you can. A lot of people panic because they burn through their budget every day. The way Etsy ads run work is that the intention is to burn through that budget so that you can collect the data, I think, in the beginning. Once you know what works, you should be able to design with that intentionality in mind and that data you've garnered in mind, so that you can, like, I now will advertise every single listing I create because I know it's got the potential to sell. So there's a fine line though, right? You have to cross that threshold of knowing what works.
Do you identify that through the search terms that people are sort of finding you through and buying through? Or is it just a case of, you test a lot of products with ads, and then once that are working on Etsy, you do more of that?
Yeah, so it comes down, well, that's a big part of it, but it comes down to something that Tony Robbins said. It was like, success leaves clues. So I don't just look at that. That's the greatest place to start, because it's data, and it's data you've paid for, essentially, right? You're getting all that because you paid for the ads, and you can see that all in Etsy's back end too. You'll see what people land on in order to find your product. So they could be searching for a long tail keyword that might not have anything to do with the design you've created, but might somehow be able, there might be a way for you to be able to leverage that long tail keyword and put a unique spin on it in the niche that you're trying to serve. So you can get a lot of really good insights there. But I also look at what people are saying in reviews. I look at, comments, like good reviews, bad reviews. Pay attention to every single bit of it. What has been selling for you too, and look at how long it takes between getting any kind of views in terms of traction too. There's all kinds of data that you can pay attention to, and it's all about really, I think, identifying the patterns of what's working, right? And it's, everybody just panics usually after a week of running ads or two because they're burning this money. But it's at the same time, if you're getting some kind of data, like, let it run for a while and see, because even if you're not getting the views and visits that week, you can use tools like eRank or Everbee, and you can see what your competition's doing. Are they also not making sales that week? Because if they're also in a slump, then, that kind of takes the sting out of, the slump or the valley that you're in now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could go on forever, but there's just so much more to look at than just SEO and data.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. What about shipping? Do you charge for shipping? Because your pricing sounded very interesting, with 30% sale. Is there still a shipping cost that comes on top of that, or?
Yeah, so with Etsy, I charge the $27 plus 6 or 7 US shipping. So before a sale, I'll have it's like $33 to $34 typically is inclusive of shipping. So I charge shipping separately for I charge shipping separately for that reason too, because there used to be a time where Etsy didn't apply their fees to the shipping. So people were charging shipping because they wouldn't pay a fee on that. So you could just make extra money, really. But now they charge a fee on, the flat fee is 6.5% across shipping and like basically all revenue. But it's a chance because when you put something on sale, it only impacts the actual list price of your item. It doesn't reduce the shipping fee. So it's a chance for you to recoup a significant portion of that, sale price, right? So that's an easy one. Plus, you have the initial lower price point that is customer facing, right? So people would rather click on something that has, $27, but it's on sale now for, I don't know, 19, versus something that has the extra 7 baked back in and is now $27 or $26. So there is psychology there behind it. But yeah, definitely charge for shipping. I think Etsy just announced yesterday, actually, that they've got a new buyer membership that is coming out.
Okay.
That, yeah, it literally yesterday morning they announced that their SVP of marketing, I think. And what's going to happen there is that people are going to be able, it sounds like they're going to try to do their own version of Amazon Prime. So the buyers are going to be able to subscribe to a service. And with that comes significant discounts that the seller is going to have to negotiate, or the opportunity to have free shipping. So the nice thing about this free shipping element of that is that the Etsy will cover, if you charge for shipping, like my $6 or $7 US, Etsy as a member will grant them free shipping on those particular products, but we will still get compensated for the shipping costs. So we're still going to make that money.
Oh,
it comes out of the fees that they're paying. So if you've never offered if you've been offering free shipping, another reason to stop offering free shipping and to have that lower initial price point, because now you don't have shipping baked in, but also charge for shipping, because people, if they've added it to their cart, they're emotionally already vested and they're not going to pull it out of a cart for a $5 or $6 or $7 shipping fee. And then Etsy's going to pay you for that anyway. So yeah, it's win-win-win.
That's really interesting. I hadn't heard of that yet, and it does make total sense in that case too. It'd always be stupid to offer free shipping if you get compensated for it, and if people get free shipping kind of thrown in with the prime for Etsy. So that's cool. That's interesting insights right there. Do you sell any other products on Etsy as well, or is it mainly t-shirts?
Garments, I would say. I do sell, come Christmas and Q4, a lot of sweatshirts and hoodies, but for the most part, I make designs that look good on t-shirts. Not every t-shirt design will necessarily apply to every hoodie or sweatshirt design, I don't think. But that's the bread and butter for me is t-shirts. I'm good at it. It's what I do. It's what I know. And I don't see it going away. It's commodity, right?
Do you sell on any other platforms as well? Because I'm guessing Etsy and Amazon are your biggest, but have you dabbled into any other marketplaces?
I've had a TeePublic and Redbubble account for, oh man, longer than Etsy. So maybe 10, 12 plus years. Yeah. Or whenever, around that time anyway. And they make me a steady 150 to 200. I haven't uploaded also in over 10 years to those, but they make me a steady $100 to $200 a month. So I really should, look at that. But then, I get discouraged when we saw that it was a TeePublic that bought Redbubble or vice versa.
Yeah. Redbubble bought TeePublic and they brought the tier systems in.
The tier system.
Then it's kind of got a very bad rep, and my income has gone down since then, or my sales have gone down since then. But yeah, I mean, considering you haven't done anything for 10 years, that's a pretty cool side income.
Yeah, I mean, it's not much by any stretch, but it could have paid a cell phone bill, or like there's things that it can cover, or even my I guess Etsy ad fees, if you wanted to call it that. The two I really want to get into though is that Printify has an Amazon.com, so like a Seller Central integration that is almost completed. I think they're about ready to launch a beta, or it's been in beta for a while for select users. And I'm ready for that to go kind of big, because I know what works on Amazon through merch. And the only way I think I could really blow up faster on Amazon is to be able to offer things that I know I can offer, like customization or different little nuances that wouldn't necessarily have the same level or a slightly higher barrier to entry than the typical merch shirt. And then Walmart marketplace is another spot that I'd like to do. I'm all about going big now, as opposed to trying to be, the boutique on Etsy. It's just, yeah, go after the big niches, go big, and yeah. So those are the two that I'm kind of looking to. I'm probably not going to be able to do it. I'm looking at the calendar right now, but not this year. But it would be nice to hit the ground running, early Q1 next year with a bit of the merch cushion in the bank.
Oh, that's definitely interesting. What do you if you did get into Amazon, or if you started selling on Amazon Seller Central for Printify, would you still? I'm guessing you would still focus on t-shirts, but with like a personalized aspect, or would you try out different products like coffee mugs? Because that's what people tend to do, or what I've done as well is with Amazon Seller Central, you have the chance, right, to offer coffee mugs, which Amazon Merch doesn't have, or stickers, for example. That's where I'm getting most of my sales. Hats is another option. So is that something you would dabble in as well, or do you feel like you're the t-shirt specialist, so you're going to stick to that? Or
that's a good question. I think I definitely want to try. Sorry, I got a neighbor who's dragging furniture there, it sounds like. I definitely want to try looking at new products to offer, not for any other reason other than I just feel like I need a little bit of a change. Something that I could maybe charge, higher margin stuff, if anything, right? I wouldn't personally probably do mugs, only because I know the print process, sublimation, for example. If you don't know how to design for mugs, you're going to get what's called as ghosting, which is where the edges can get blurred. And there's, a design consideration. So for me, it would be things that I think I can leverage my skill set of t-shirt designing across a myriad of things. So I would stick to like fabric substrates, I guess, for the most part. Back to school be huge with backpacks.
maybe
There's
like duvet covers. That would be a big margin sort of thing.
Those are big. My wife actually does pretty well with some shower curtains, wrapping paper, believe it or not, niched wrapping paper, right? Like, so she sells, her Etsy shop is all big dog centric. And she sells wrapping paper on there year round. So Christmas, she just put Santa hats on the same design of all the dogs that were on the wrapping paper, but it sells year round for dog lovers. Like it's one of those things that is an evergreen element that a lot of people overlook. And the margins are there. She's doubling up. She's doing like 100% margin on a lot of the stuff. So I want to make, more bang for buck if I'm going to do anything that's actually going to require any work, right? We talk, and yes, merch is work, but the passive element of merch is something that is, people don't want to say passive income. Yes, there's work, and it's kind of active passive in that sense, where you have to kind of massage the beach to keep it, keep the wheels greased.
It's a mixture
so to speak.
of both, isn't it?
Yeah. But you can definitely take, 4 days off merch and make enough money to survive on, right? So there is a passive element there that I don't think you'll see when we when we talk about Seller Central and stuff like that. I think you're going to have to be more competitive. So I want to get, maximize my bang for buck for sure.
Interesting.
What about you? So it's mugs for you on Seller Central?
Amazon Seller Central, yeah. So that is, I did try out lots of different product types, but the majority of the sales that I am getting, they're either coffee mugs, which I was already selling quite a bit on Etsy, so it kind of translated quite well. And stickers. Surprisingly, stickers sell a lot better for me in Amazon Seller Central than they do on Etsy. I'm not sure why. I think probably because I listed more as well. Yeah, I was bulk uploading stickers to Amazon because you don't have a listing fee as such, do you? With Etsy, you always pay per listing. But yeah, it's worth trying. I wouldn't say it's as great as you might expect, at least from my experience. But I've gone down sort of the quantity route and just repurposing my merch designs, my Etsy designs. I've not really dug deep or done anything special with like personalizing the items or something like that. But it can definitely bring some sales on the side if you've already got the listings, the designs out there, and if you can easily push them onto Amazon Seller Central, it is definitely worth a try.
Yeah, I think I'm going to definitely be leveraging. I'll start with what I know works, right? With designs I've already got, but I definitely want to branch out into new products. I really like those enamel, whatever the camping style mugs. I really like that kind of thing. It just
Yeah, I've
seems like
sold a lot of
something.
them on Etsy at least.
Oh, is that what you're selling specifically? Nice.
Yeah, I've sold a lot of them on Etsy. Not so much on Seller Central. On Seller Central, it's more the ceramic ones that work for me, like white ceramic.
Yeah.
The only thing with those camping mugs is at least through Printful, I think they only offer like a small size. It's not even small; it's like 12 ounce. So it's the standard size, I guess.
Mm.
But one thing to consider in your listing, if you are going to try and sell those, they have a very, very thin sort of ring or material, meaning if you think about a ceramic mug, they're quite thick on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So even though this camping mug might hold the same amount of liquid than a traditional ceramic mug, the camping mug is going to look a lot smaller just because of that thin rim. So I've often had complaints from customers. They get the mug and they're like, why is this so tiny? It's terrible. When in reality, it's just the standard size mug. So that's worth pointing out in your listings to anyone who I think they do exist in bigger sizes, but they're rarely offered through print providers.
Interesting. Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind. I think I'll be hitting you up when it comes time, though, for sure. knowing that you're on Seller Central, that's just getting started on that. It can be sounds cumbersome or seems cumbersome. So
I do remember the whole sign up process and the GTIN exemption or whatever it's called. That was quite a pain, and I don't remember how it actually worked. It's just a lot of back and forth with the support, I think, which is always a bit difficult with Amazon. But yeah, you can definitely figure it out. I'm sure there must be some tutorials on it. I wouldn't know how to recreate it really myself, the tutorial. But yeah, anyway, that was an interesting conversation. Lots of good insight about Etsy and Amazon from a veteran in the space for over 10 years.
make me feel
so
old now,
if people
yeah.
want to learn more, if people want to learn more from you, where should they go?
Well, there's my YouTube channel, which is at Jay's Way Works. And then I have my, you can go to jaysway.works is kind of like my link tree with a bunch of links there. And then my Inner Circle membership that is going to be reopening, looks like middle of September now. So we're closed for another month and a half, 6-7 weeks. But yeah, that's a new coaching membership that I launched that is intended to be accessible to everything. So to everyone. So it's not some $200, $300, or $2,500. I heard recently there's a $2,500 course out there that they make you sign a contract before signing up for, which you can't leave a bad review on. Like, that is mind blowing to me. Yeah. The intention for this was to be less than $10 a week. So it's $37 a month. I want it to be accessible to as many people, and we're having wins. We're having genuine wins in there. So it's, Phil, too. It's like, it can be, the solopreneur journey can be lonely at times. It's nice to be able to dive into work and know that you don't have to rely on somebody else to get that paycheck. The onus is on yourself. And with that comes no glass ceiling. You can, grow as big as you want. But at the same time, it gets lonely sometimes. So just having, a community that you can celebrate your wins, you share your hardships with, I think is probably the most valuable part. But above and beyond that, I do weekly coaching calls in there, largely based on design specifically, getting designs out that will sell, right?
Oh, that's amazing. And yeah, that's really great of you to actually make it accessible. I guess you're limiting it time-wise so it doesn't get overwhelming for you because you want to provide value to everyone. But yeah, that's a very affordable price for like a private community. It's probably the most affordable one I've heard of. So that's
and it's really not cool. The intention. Well, thank you for saying that, because the intention isn't to undercut. The intention is to literally make it as accessible as possible to people who, you shouldn't have to decide whether or not you can, choose a tool or choose grocery shopping over medication or things like that. And we've had like these stories shared, and that's why they're kind of the front of my mind. But $10 a week, less than $10 a week. Like, the goal is to get you making that back weekly, right? Otherwise, otherwise it's fruitless, right? I just want to help as many people as efficiently and quickly as possible, I guess is the thing.
Yeah, that's really cool. And again, props for getting that many sales in T8,000. That's a great achievement. I think that's probably something that a lot of people would look at and not really recognize the skill there, especially with only like 1,000 something designs. That is, yeah, that's really, really good.
Yeah, almost
So you
1,600.
definitely,
Thank you.
you
Yeah.
definitely know what you're talking about. All of your links, or all of Jay's links, will be in the description, to his YouTube and to his website and the coaching program. And yeah, thanks a lot for coming onto the show, Jay. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's humbling. Like we were chatting about this, just before, but like the people who I would consider of stature in the space, like yourself, we've got Juna from Detour Shirts, got a few others. There's the Cassie Johnsons, and everybody who's got like way more subscribers, right? 6-figure plus, and you're rounding the cusp here. So if you guys are watching this, make sure you subscribe so you can hit that 6-figure subscriber list. Yeah. You guys have been doing what I think is the best for the community, which is, share as much knowledge, because we're not competing with each other. People ask me this all the time, but we're not competing with each other. People might like my story over yours, or the way I sound, or they might hate the way I look and just like the aesthetic that you have better than me, right? It doesn't matter that way, and we can all grow so much faster together. So that said, if you have a smaller channel and you're out there, I'd love to have you on to throw that, to kind of, pay that forward in some way too, if you're out there watching. So don't hesitate to hit me up. Thank you so much, man.